In this chapter, together we're going to go over a practical example and a sample project that I've done before, and we're going to build it from scratch, and together we're going to run the analysis and use the ETAP options that we went over during this course. What you're seeing on the screen is the routing plan and the job site for the project that we were adding 2 new air compressors with a load of 50 horsepower, which are going to be fed from the existing MCC C1 in the existing motor control center room. From section 2 of this MCC, we're going to route 2 power cable and bring it all the way down to the new loads. Considering this as a single line diagram, we can see that the loads in red colors are the new 50 horsepower loads. So now let's together build up this simple single line diagram for this sample project. Let's create a new project and let's name it sample P1. Switch over one line mode, turn on the grid, and let's create the one line diagram that I showed you. Now let's again step by step create our simple one line diagram. Let's put the power grid, the upstream transformer for this MCC, the main breaker of this MCC. Let's set our values. We're gonna have, let's say, 4.1 kV utility, 100% voltage running, short circuit, and the impedance ratio, and click on OK. The transformer in this case is a 1000 kVA transformer, and the secondary voltage, it's 480 volt. And let's put everything as their typical numbers. Now for the breaker, let's set the rating. Again, if you look at the one line diagram, the main breaker, should cover everything downstream that is connected to the main MCC bus. We have a 63, 75, 49, 75, and 50 horsepower, 250 horsepower air compressor that we are adding. So in this case, per NEC, if we can calculate, the main bus should cover the sum of all the full load amps of the loads. So it's the 800 amp breaker with 3 pole and 480 voltage should work. So let's now choose the best option in terms of the main breaker. Let's choose something from Cutler Hammer. 480. Yes, 480, 800. Click on OK. Yeah, okay. Now let's connect the MCC bus to this breaker. Extend it. Now we have a 480 volt bus. In order to put the loads, let's go back to our one line picture. As you see, we have a 63, 75, 49, and 75 again existing loads on the MCC. So by double clicking on the motor icon, we can drop more than one motors and 2 for the new ones. Again, one thing that we need here is by double clicking on the circuit breakers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the cable that connect the breaker to the loads. 1, we will align everything to have a good organization. Okay, so now connect the motors to this cables. By clicking on the pink dot on each end of our equipment, connect them together. Now let's align the breakers and put them in one line by right clicking, selecting them, right clicking them on them, and this, and again right clicking on the selected cables and going to alignment tab and this, and moving if you play around and move your objects inside eTab, you will get a good feeling that it's not that hard to arrange your stuff on the one line diagram. Okay, now let's individually set our settings for each equipment, starting with the breaker. So if you go back to the picture, the first breaker trip is 225, second 225, and it's typical for all the loads. So what we can do now that we found out that all the breaker settings are the same, what we can do is we can select the rest of the breakers, we can delete, and we can just set the setting for the first breaker and then copy this breaker and attach it to other branches. Let's just go to the library, and in the library let's from Cutler Hammer choose a breaker that supports the 225 amp trip and frame. Okay, we can choose the MA model, 225 for 480, and click on OK. Okay, now let's just copy and paste and tap the breakers into their branches with the same settings. Same thing would apply for the cables. We have the same cables needed for all the Now let's set the setting for each cable. In this case, we can do the same thing for the cables too. Let's remove the cables and do the first one and set the first one and copy it and apply for the other branches. From library, we gonna choose a cable. Let's choose a cable, medium voltage cable, NEC rubber, 3 per core, and size 4 odd. Size 4 odd, and click on OK. And for the length, for the existings, let's keep it as 100 feet. Let's copy this and paste it for other branches. And the last one. Okay. And finally, we need to set our motor's horsepower and information. So the first one, as you remember, was a 63 horsepower motor, and select the full load amper NEC. The second one was 75. Third one, 49. And the fourth one was again 75 horsepower motor. And the new ones are the 250 horsepower air compressors. One thing that we need to do again is to tag for each one. For the existing, let's keep it at default, but in order to get a better feeling, let's put the name tag for the new ones, air comp number 1, and air comp number 2, and click on OK. Okay, now we have these two new compressors, and save the project. So in order to distinguish the new scope of work, let's put a polyline text box around. Now in order to separate the new scope of work from the rest of the one line, let's put a text box around it, and let's name it scope of work. Okay, so now we know that these two compressors are the new scope of work, and again save it.